So I'm struggling a little to answer this question, but I don't know. I don't want to assume that the facts, the statistics are the way they are today. I don't want to assume that it's because there is something preventing women from rising up. Perhaps the question should be, do women really want it? If you really want it, go and get it.
Hi, I'm Shulin, here to inspire you on the infinite possibilities after the bar. This is a very special episode to commemorate International Women's Day. I've gathered 3 of my law school friends. We go way back, and I'm sure we have a lot to talk about. And it's actually very exciting for me because it's the first time I have to manage 3 guests at the same time. It's really remarkable that these 3 Singaporean ladies, they are all partners with international law firms. So Debby is a restructuring partner with Dentons Rodike, and we have Kimarie, who's an international trade commodities lawyer with Watson Farley. And last but definitely not least, we have Seow Hui. Seow Hui heads up employment law with Bird & Bird. Welcome, my friends.
Thanks for having us.
Great. So we'll get started immediately. Was becoming a partner in a law firm part of your life plan? Shall we start off with Seow Hui?
I definitely didn't plan on being a partner. I definitely didn't plan on being a lawyer. I actually wanted to be a flight attendant.
Flight attendant.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and my mother wouldn't have it. She said, she would prefer it if I had a professional degree. But many years on, I realized that it's pretty much the same job. We're all in providing services.
And look at where you are now.
Still climbing every day.
Yes, okay. How about you, Kimarie? Was becoming a partner part of your life plan?
It wasn't something that I started off with, but just like having a family wasn't something that I set out and planned to do. But along the way, as I started my practice, as I continued with my practice, it eventually became a goal of mine.
Oh, wow. Thanks for sharing. And Debby, how about you?
For me, when I was a pupil, a senior counsel in a boutique firm actually offered me to have partnership within 5 years if I joined her. But at that time, it was not something I considered. And I still don't know whether, it's something I really want. But, as the saying goes, the more you want something, sometimes the less likely you achieve it. So maybe, it's good to have some reverse psychology. So I really, in fact, when I was promoted, I was a bit shocked, I was actually doing the calculations as to whether I will earn more as a partner or if I continue to stay on as a senior associate.
Very practical.
Whether, because I'll lose my CPF if I became promoted.
Oh my gosh.
So I would say that I'm not hard up to be a partner, but, just being a good lawyer, grooming juniors, that's more important to me.
Wow, spoken like a true Singaporean, thinking about your CPF and the dollars and cents. So I'm going to say that all 3 of you did not set out to be a partner, but somehow you ended up being a partner and female partners in international law firms. So we'll touch on that a little bit more later. Because this is International Women's Day, I'm going to ask the obvious. Did the fact that you're female stand in the way to partnership? And can we talk about both the positives and the negatives in, being a female lawyer?
Yeah, I have to say that I was really very lucky when I started with my professional career. I was training at Allen & Gladhill in the shipping litigation department. And as my mentor, I had a formidable litigator who was female and head of the department. So it was, really enriching experience, and the tone was set right. Because as a practice trainee, I knew that a female can be in a leadership position. So that was very inspiring for me.
How about any negatives, Kimarie? So you had a really positive female role model. Was there anything that stood in your way?
Yes, I had a great start, but then my career was not like a linear path, right? It's been more than 15 years actually, more than 15 years. And of course, I've changed a couple of law firms along the way. So the path has not always been a straight path. And I've, had the opportunity to work with other law firms where the experience may have not been as positive as my start.
Okay, I'm going to dig a bit deeper. So when you say not so positive, does it have anything to do with the fact that, I mean, you look amazing for a mother of 3. Does it have anything to do with you, starting a family? Was that something that stood in your way of becoming a partner?
I think as a female lawyer, definitely having a family can be quite disruptive for your careers, because it's inevitable that you have to take some time off work to have children, and then you have to go back. So there are a couple of obstacles that you have to overcome, and that's definitely been difficult.
Yeah. But you did it. Yeah, thanks, Kimarie.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask Seow Hui next, because Seow Hui is the other mother in this group. She has a young boy called Alex. Alex might be listening to this. So was there anything that stood in your way, towards in your career plan?
Yeah, sure. I don't think my journey was easier or more difficult than a male lawyer's journey. I think the challenges that all of us as lawyers in private practice that we face are the same, regardless of whether you're male or female. I think I have had I've met people in my career, both men and women, who've lifted me up. So I never thought that gender was something that stood in my way or should stand in anyone's way.
Okay.
But that said, I think there are assumptions that people make about women, women in private practice, when they are family planning. I think it's very easy to assume that they would want to take it a bit easy, or take it down a notch. I have been asked whether I really want partnership because I'm married and I have a kid. But I think it's quite easy to dispel these assumptions.
Yes.
Just prove it by your actions, and if you show you really want it, nothing should stand in your way.
Yeah. Well said. I really love what you shared. So I'm gonna go to Debby next, because Debby, even though you're not a mom, you're female, your partner, you have shared with me previously that you have faced certain obstacles before. Could you tell us a little bit more?
I think you have to understand that our society is still a patriarchal one, and it doesn't not affect you just because you're a woman without children. There are certain societal norms, for instance, where people think that women in high-powered positions are unpleasant. They are, the B word comes out. And then they'll say that actually women are not so technically competent. They're very emotional. But the thing is that you cannot let all this. It's just noise. You can't let it drown out. And it's important in life to fight for what you want to achieve, and and not let your beliefs be affected by what others say. And you need to build a community of supportive people, and that supportive community can also comprise of both men and women.
Yes.
And I found that, and so I've not let any of these negative voices drown me out. Yeah.
But how about the positives? Surely there are a lot of positives, right, about being a female lawyer. So we were just talking before this, like, men can't bat their eyelids, but women can. So there are some positives, some pros to being a female lawyer.
I think one is good and bad. So the flip side of being, people not thinking you're competent could be also that they are, their guard is less up against you, and you are more, they tend to underestimate you. So that can actually play to your advantage in court, for instance. I just think that you must play to your strengths, even as a woman.
Yes. Oh, I love that. People underestimating you. So it's quite nice to play the underdog card.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so like we said, International Women's Day is all about embracing equity. Were there times that you faced or experienced unfairness or bias as a woman in your field? I mean, it's sort of a similar question, But I guess I'm asking to see whether you are willing to share any personal stories, how you address any bias that you faced.
Okay, maybe I can go first. So,
Okay.
when I was relatively young, I did decently well. I won 2 significant court appeal cases. Then some people were saying that, oh, no, actually she's not that good. She only did well because she has a supportive, team of men doing her work for her. Actually women are not so smart. But the thing is that you can't let all these things get to you, and for me, it's like I have various role models in life, people who have like fought through, many obstacles and still got to where they are, I would say that, Datuk Anwar Ibrahim is one of my role models.
Wow.
It has taken him 20 years to get to where he is and become PM of Malaysia. So if he can, survive and persevere, what's all this to me? Yeah.
Okay. Wow, I did not expect to hear Anwar's name in our interview, but okay. How about you, Kimarie?
Yes, I mentioned that it was very difficult during the years where I had to take time off to have my children and come back. And I think even before I embarked on being a mother, there were questions being raised at work about whether I will be committed to my work, whether I will come back and return to my job. And even after I've had my children, when I came back, whether I was, going to be content to take a seat back and just, not be as dedicated to my work. And these are all kind of biases and discriminations and assumptions were being made without that open conversation being had with me personally. And so those were the difficulties that I had to overcome to make it known that actually, you can't just assume that because I'm a mom, I'm going to be taking a back seat in my career, and that I remain, very committed to having a career as a lawyer.
But my question is, because I'm a mom myself, I have 2 boys, and yes, people make assumptions all the time. But let's say if I'm a senior associate or a junior partner, and there are these biases, people whisper in the corridor, oh, is she having a baby? Is she not? Maybe she just looks fat, whatever. How do you overcome that? Because it will still make you feel lousy. It will still make you feel a little like an outsider. And I mean, yes, I think we can sit here and talk about we've overcome it. But how do we give, are there actionable tips, advice? What did you do? And what would you do differently, actually, now knowing what you know?
It's a very difficult thing to change because it's a work environment. It's it's something that your office, the law firm, the culture has to change. So now that I've been through it, I talk to the rest of the female members in my team. I try to make sure that they have a voice. But I think the firm needs to support it. The firm culture needs to be able to support it. It's still a huge topic in all the law firms that I know. So it's about awareness and trying to change things.
Great. And so I'm going to ask another question related to the theme about embracing equity. And this is more for Debbie. Have you embraced equity on a personal level? Because now we've been talking about company level, law firm level. Have you embraced equity on your personal level?
So this is important because you need to set your affairs at home correct, before you face the outside world, and try to climb in your career. So for me, having a supportive spouse really truly matters very much. So my husband is he's someone who is not afraid for me to do well in my career, even if sometimes I earn more, sometimes he earns more. So it doesn't matter, but I think he knows that when I'm busy and all that, he will try to see what he can do for me, grab food for me or something like that. So having a spouse who truly understands that you need to work long hours, there'll be days where you will be working past midnight in your office, someone who truly cares for you. I think that sets the foundation and the groundwork for having a fulfilling and successful career. Yeah.
That is so heartwarming to hear. I love hearing that. How about, let's move away from this topic of equity, which is, the next question is still slightly related. So when we talk about equity in the society, like a larger community-wise, have you all had experience serving underrepresented communities? Could you tell us a little bit more? I know, Debbie, you have, right?
Yeah. For me, as a litigator, I mean, even though I focus on commercial cases, I volunteer with the judiciary's volunteers, and for this, we act for prisoners who are on death row. So these are like death penalty offences, mostly drugs. So these are people who are, unable to afford counsel, and it's important for them to get representation because they are facing the death sentence. So I think there was once where I acted for the only woman then on the death row, and so I went to Changi Women's Prison. I had to go through like 5 or 6 doors just to see my client, and the fact that I was a woman, I could empathize with how her defense and things like that, because for her she was actually she may have been implicated by a boyfriend of hers who was also caught for for drugs and things like that. So I understood that as a woman. So it's important to for women to also step up, and it's not just about a lot of people who are on these schemes, they tend to be more men, but it's good for me as a woman to also be able to step up, and be part of this scheme.
Wow, well said. I didn't know you have experience doing that, other than being a restructuring lawyer.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to move on to talk about leadership, female representation at the C level. So in 2021, 26% of all CEOs and managing directors were women. So that means 74%, right, of C-level positions were filled by men. What's it like to be a female leader in a male-dominated field? I mean, I know there are a lot of other female partners out there, but it's still the norm for a male to be the head of department or the managing partner. Why do you think there are so few female leaders, and what can we do to help more women rise up to leadership positions? Shall we start with Seow Hui? Seow Hui, you head up employment law in your firm.
But actually, my firm is headed up by women.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Yes.
So I'm struggling a little to answer this question, but I don't know. I don't want to assume that the facts, the statistics are the way they are today. I don't want to assume that it's because there is something preventing women from rising up. Perhaps the question should be, do women really want it? If you really want it, go and get it. I can only answer this question from my own lens. I've never felt limited in that sense. But I speculate. Perhaps there are other more joyful things that inspire women to either leave practice or to do something outside private practice. And if they find joy in doing that, this is not a bad statistic in and of itself. If you just enjoy doing other things, go do it, and you'll be excellent. You don't have to be in the board to be, to have a meaningful life.
Yes, and that goes to the definition of success.
Yeah.
Because I can define success as, well, I have a fulfilling life. I don't need to be a partner in a law firm.
Exactly.
I can still be a lawyer, but I can be a lawyer in a different capacity. And maybe because you have been exposed to really strong female role models like Lorraine.
Yeah.
There are many other female, Sandra, who are the co-managing partners of your firm. How about you, Kimarie? What are your thoughts on this?
Actually, I think Seow Hui's perspective is a really refreshing one.
Yes.
That's, the numbers are what it is because the females have made a choice. And yeah, I've never thought about it that way. But certainly the 26% statistic has been raised over and over again. And even in our law firm, where a concerted effort has been made to try to address the perceived imbalance and to try to raise the statistic up to the 50%. At my law firm as well, we've just got a managing partner who's female, and she's done a lot to improve equity and equality in this area. And I think, we've had very honest discussions throughout the whole firm as to what we can do to try to raise the statistic. And again, it's culture. It's about getting, because at the associate level, the statistics are very different, right, to the leadership level. And the question is, how do we assist the associates to develop into their full potential, and becoming leaders in the law firm.
Yes. I like what you shared about the statistics at the associate level being very different from the leadership.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were all in NUS law at the same time. There were, I would say, equal number, roughly, between women and male. I think there were at least 180, 200 people in
probably
our
more
cohort.
girls, actually.
More girls, right? More
Yeah,
girls.
2/3
Yes.
women and
Yeah.
1/3
Yes.
men in our class.
Exactly. And I've not done a formal poll, but based on my informal poll, there are way more male partners than there are female partners from in our batch. Like the three of you are the exceptions to the norm. There are many women whom I thought would have ended up being a partner, but they haven't. They've chosen something else that might be more fulfilling, and I personally think that there needs to be more female role models because we only know what we know. There's so much that we don't know. So I want to ask a little bit about working in a team of women because I, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, have an all-female team. I know Seow Hui as well. She has an all-female team. It's not deliberate,
Or maybe it is. I'm biased.
Yeah, but how is it like working in a team of all women? And when you compare that with working in a co-ed working environment, what are the advantages? What do you think?
I don't know. It just happened that way. I mean, we've had male associates in our team. They left, but it's for natural causes. I'm pretty sure they didn't leave because they were in an all girls team. But I can understand that there are certain assumptions that people make about male associates and female associates. I don't know if you
And
make
also
those
assumptions about female bosses. Can I just say? Yes.
Really, you might want to tell me what people about female partners.
Yes.
But I think there may be a perception that female associates a bit more meticulous. I don't know. But of course, I've been told that's not entirely true. Assumption that male associates, if you put them in court, they're a bit more aggressive. I don't know. But I'm saying the assumptions and the biases are both ways.
Yeah.
But let me just clarify that the hiring decisions, yes, I have an all-female team, but I think it's quite coincidental.
Yes, coincidental. I know. I mean, I'm interviewing a man next week who wants to join my role, and kudos to him. But sometimes because there's so many females, there might be guys who feel like, oh wow, I might not want to join an all-female team or work for a female boss. I'm just saying, and again, this is my assumption. But hopefully, I can add some diversity to my team in the coming months.
So what's the assumption about female bosses?
Wow, that's such a loaded question. Because we're all female leaders, right? I think the common assumptions are, more emotional, maybe more demanding. What are some of the assumptions, Debbie? Do you think you can help me out?
I think we also perceived to be more nurturing.
Yes. Okay, positive assumption. Yes.
More meticulous, more nurturing.
But definitely a lot more empathy. I mean, I feel like I have a lot more empathy, especially after personally becoming a mum. I have a way more empathy. So as partners in international firms, how do you set the tone for your team? Seow Hui, do you want to take this one?
I say this to any associate that comes through the doors of Bird and Bird because we run a training program for the new birds, and I say this to all of them. If you're serious about a career in private practice in the long run, you've got to stop thinking of yourself as a number 2 or a number 3 to the boss in your team. You're a lawyer. You're a lawyer in your own right. You are not someone's assistant, and it's very empowering to think of it that way. Once you stop thinking of yourself as hiding behind the shadow of your boss's great stature, it's quite amazing the things you can do.
Wow, really like that. So now let's move on and talk about overcoming challenges. And I'm gonna start with imposter syndrome. I don't even like the word imposter because it suggests like we're a fraud. But that's how sometimes we feel like a fraud. I know I felt like a fraud when I first started out. I still do. And I was just wondering, is this something that, any of you would like to talk a little bit about? Imposter syndrome, feeling like a fraud. Debbie, would you like to share?
I think there was a Financial Times article maybe about 3 or 4 months ago where it said that imposter syndrome is actually the human condition. So a lot of us actually feel that, not just women. And okay, maybe women feel it more because, we are not seen to be the high achieving gender. Therefore, if we achieve, certain milestones and successes in our career, people may say that, oh, how did she even get there? So it's a construct in that sense. So the way to actually move beyond this would be, until we get true equality, where people don't see males and females as being capable of achieving different things. I think we need to manage how we react to our own successes and failures. So one way to deal with it would be to see any failure or success as being only temporary, and you embrace it with equanimity. And once you're able to do that, you can actually get past any imposter syndrome, because it's just it's not about highs and lows already. It's just like it's just a flat line, and you don't see that you, like, when you achieve a certain success, you don't feel that, oh no, I'll be found out as a fraud anytime, and I'm going to fall flat on my face. But you just see it as a you just embrace any successes and failures with equanimity.
Okay.
That's the way to deal with it. Yeah.
I like what you shared, but I find that very difficult to apply personally, because sometimes when a failure comes up, I feel like, oh, the world is coming to an end, even though that's not the case, And if there is a success, I want to celebrate, I want to, but I will immediately have that feeling like, oh my gosh, how can I follow that? How can I top that? Yeah. How about Seow Hui? You look like you have something to share about experiencing this.
I actually think imposter syndrome is a good thing, because it's a reflection of your conscience. For example, sometimes when I win pitches, or you get a nice juicy potential matter, and you go, they instructed me and not so and so, some big shot, and then you start to doubt, like, oh, why is it? Am I really that good? But I think that's just your conscience talking, and perhaps that internal struggle within yourself, the need to stay true to yourself, I think is a good thing.
Yes.
And in fact, I was talking to some of the female partners in my firm. One of them was shared a story that stuck with me. She said she had just come back from maternity. She's a very successful partner, by the way. She had just come back from maternity leave. So business was a little bit slow. They were not making any money. And so she said to her boss at the time, look, we're not making any money. I think I can forego my partner's draw until we start making some money, which I thought was a very decent thing to do. And her boss, who's male, basically just laughed it off. But my point is that I don't think a man would say that. I don't think a man would offer to go without salary. And it's, to my mind, how women view themselves, and the role they play in an organization.
Yes.
Not directly. This anecdote is not directly related to your point on imposter syndrome, but just overall, women, the psychology, because links back to imposter syndrome, and it could be just a combination of things. The confidence levels between men and women, their sense of what they're entitled to and what they're not. All of that, just goes into the psyche, and it's, women and men are fundamentally different.
Yes. And I personally, I'm going to say something which is politically incorrect. I don't believe in gender equality. I don't think we will ever achieve it, but there's a lot to be said.
It's just different. I don't believe in equality either, but we're different.
We're just programmed differently, we're made differently. Yeah, and it's about embracing equity, not so much equality. So I really like what you just said, because it's about overcoming fears, our belief systems, and challenging the narrative that we have set out.
Correct.
It's really about setting the narrative. So can you all share what was one fear you had to overcome? I had to overcome the fear of starting my own podcast. And even, coming into season 2, I had a fear. What about you, Seow Hui? Did you have any fears you had to overcome?
I've just got too many. Fear of failure. Fear of failing. I think any litigator out there, I mean, maybe some are exceptional, you've never lost a case, but I think any litigator out there would have, at one point or another in his or her career, lost a case. Yeah.
Yes.
And sometimes that fear is dangerously crippling because it makes you question, am I cut out for this? Should I even be representing the client? It creates a lot of doubts. I think particularly so for litigators.
Yes.
Anyone who's been to a courtroom, who's lost a case, been told off by a judge, been utterly humiliated by an opponent, this is a very real fear.
It is. So I really like this quote that courage is not the absence of fear, but it's having fear and still doing it anyway.
Yeah.
So how did you overcome your fear? So you had that fear, you still have that fear of failure. How do you overcome it? Like, you got that big client and you're like doubting yourself. How do you do it?
I frankly don't know. I don't know. My husband tells me that I can do it.
Okay. So thanks to Raza.
Yes.
Okay, so many female lawyers quit practice. Like Kimarie, you said about the number of lawyers, female lawyers at associate level versus female lawyers at partner level, because they view it as an unsustainable option, especially if they want to have children. And even if they don't want to have children, they just don't want to be a partner. I want to ask actually both the two of you, Seow Hui and Kimarie, how applicable was this for you? Was that a consideration? I know Seow Hui said not really, but right now, is it a constant balancing act? How do you really make it work for you? And Kimarie, you have 3 kids, so I honestly, I don't know how you do it.
Yes, I think both Debby and Seow Hui have pointed out 2 factors which really support them, and to make it sustainable, there are actually, I thought, there are 3 key components. One is your own philosophy in life, how you want to manage your household as well as your career. Second is your family and how they support you. So your children have to understand, the demands of work as well. And my children have been very, very supportive. And well, they're a bit old. They're a bit older now, so they
How old are they?
They're 10, 9, 7. And
So they were not supportive when they were younger.
well, they
became
didn't
supportive over the
understand. They were babies, right?
Yes,
so
of course.
yeah. And then my husband is also very incredibly supportive. So that's the second factor. And then the third factor actually is the law firm. So your team members, your colleagues, they all have to be behind you. And I think when these 3 factors come together, personal philosophy, knowing that you have to do a balancing act, you can't be too hard on yourself, and ensure that you are like, the super mom and super lawyer, everything combined. These 3 factors come together, then I think you can build something very sustainable.
Yes. Okay, great. I mean, I'm just going to share an anecdote. There is a very successful gynecologist, my gynecologist, and she has a 13-year-old daughter, and she shared with me that every week for the last 6 years, she would take 2 weekday afternoons off. So it is impossible to get an appointment. I always thought that it's because she's too busy, but turns out she would block those 2 afternoons off to be with her daughter. Those are the kind of practices that I feel law firms should embrace. There are law firms where they say, okay, part-time arrangements, but a lot of people say part-time arrangement, but part-time pay, but actually it's not, right? It's like full-time work, part-time pay. Yeah. But yeah, Seow Hui, what are your thoughts on this? How do you strike that balancing act?
I don't know. I'm probably not a very good mom, but
No, don't say that.
it wasn't that difficult, to be honest. Just get a lot of help. Surround yourself with help. I'm very lucky. I have a very good mother-in-law. She runs the household, so I just work, really.
So you're not afraid to delegate to your mother-in-law?
Yeah, of course.
Yes, yes.
No, look, we're all good at some things. We may not be so good at other things.
Yes.
I don't think I'm so good at running a household and, running after children. I'm better off
Yes.
working. And working to me is infinitely easier than mothering. But I accept that, and I just enjoy my son when I'm off work.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Yeah. No, I know that you're very hands-on on the weekends. Like you do a lot of arts and craft with Alex. You do a lot more things. So you are a good mom.
Thank you.
It's just you are a different brand of mom. We don't all need to be earth mothers, making organic food from scratch, sending our kids and be there for them every minute of the day. That's not possible. But it's just defining how a successful mother looks like on our own
Exactly.
terms.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Although I don't have children, but I always
Yes.
tell my friends with children this, just look at me. I was raised by mates. I turned out fine. Your kids will be fine too.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Yes, I like that. I was also raised by, partially a helper.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask Kimarie, what is the greatest risk you've ever had to take?
I think it would be moving countries from Singapore to Hong Kong, and then 2 years later, moving from Hong Kong back to Singapore.
How many years were you in Hong Kong? About
2 years.
Oh, okay.
So I think, in terms of the thoughts that went through my mind before I left to move to Hong Kong, there were a lot of questions running through my mind. Am I ready, to change countries, to change law firms at that time, to embrace, a different type of working culture. And then having done that and kind of reasonably settling in to the new country and also getting qualified, I then had to make another important decision, which is to move back to Singapore. So I would say that those were the two big greatest risks that I have.
But those risks that you took have paid off.
Yes, I think I like to say that they have.
Yes. How about Debbie? Have you taken any big risk before in your career, in your journey?
Actually, I would say specializing in restructuring and insolvency, that can be risky in its own sense. Because if it's not a financial downturn, how are you going to get your work? There won't be companies in distress. But I was very lucky because when the downturn happened in 2008, 2009, which is around when I started to do more insolvency work, I had a very major file that lasted almost 10 years. And the thing is that even with good times, right, there always be companies that they just go out of business. There was a financial crisis in a sense for like shipping companies and things like that. So it is possible to get work, even if you specialize. And you just have to remember that my skills are still as a commercial litigator. So even when I don't do as much restructuring and insolvency cases, I can do litigation, banking and finance litigation, for instance.
Wow, a file that lasted 10 years. That must have been a lot of billable hours.
Yeah, one third of my life.
Yeah, one third of your life. That's true. Okay. So, I have another question for you, Debbie. So, there's a lot of talk about burnout. I mean, you say 10-year file, right? And the attrition rate remains very high from law firms. When you feel overwhelmed or unfocused, or you've lost your focus temporarily, what do you do? Or are there any questions you start asking yourself? I'm sure at some point all of you here must have thought, oh, this is too hard. I want to go in-house or do something else. Yeah, but you're still here. You're still a restructuring partner.
So things like long hours, right? I mean, you can make simple changes in your life. So there was one point I was like working 7 days a week, and then my very good friend Johnny from my previous firm, he said that, oh, maybe you want to like stop working 7 days. So you choose either Sunday or Saturday to
So
unwind.
6 days instead of 7 days.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah. So these are small, simple changes, but sometimes it may not be just the long hours. It could be your environment. Sometimes a change of environment will actually be good for you. Sometimes we grow up. We outgrow places. Sometimes we want to set new horizons for ourselves. So you may need to change law firms, change jobs. So you can't. It's not a matter of saying that, oh, practice is not for me. But have you tried reaching out to other people, maybe speaking to headhunters and recruit specialists, and try to find a different environment, and maybe that will help you.
Yeah. Thanks, Debbie. I really like what you shared because it's so important to get a perspective outside of your law firm. Because otherwise you are, doing file after file and there's no end in sight. And that's why I think a lot of associates leave and they think that that's it. I can't do it. I will just leave. And it's a pity. Sometimes it's just about changing law firms or changing practice area. Okay, I'm going to ask you all to, now we're going to pivot a little bit to talk about advice we have for others out there, particularly for the younger female and male lawyers who are looking to build a book of business for themselves. So when we say book, for the listeners out there, it's about a partner having their own book of clients. Because, okay, I'm going to say this, but it doesn't sound really good, but a lot of partners are just judged based on your book. The number of, the amount of leads, the clients you can generate for the firm. But yeah, so what kind of tips would you give to people who are looking to start building that book? Seow Hui, because you have built a really good book of business for employment law.
I do have something to share, but it's not. I can't claim credit for it. It was something said to me very early on in my career by my then mentor, Harish, and he said to me, "Take a real interest in people."
Oh, I really like that.
Yes.
I really like that.
Yeah, and I think the rest will follow. I think it has. Yeah.
Okay, wow, love that. How about you, Kimarie? How did you build your book?
I think, yeah, it was also right at the start of my career, where, it's never too early to start. Even from day one, you should be making friends, starting to build your own network. And it's not just about clocking in the billable hours every day in the office. It's also about getting to know other people in the industry.
Hey, thanks, Kimarie, for sharing that, because when I was working in a law firm, I know there were groups of associates who would eat lunch every day with one another. Every day. Like Monday to Friday, I see them having lunch every day. And to me, I mean, back then I wasn't looking to build a book or anything, but I was just like, why would you want to have lunch every day with the same group of people? It's good to have a core group, but go out there, meet different people. That's how you start building a network. Yeah. And Debbie, how about you? Is there one actionable tip you can give to someone out there who's looking to build their own book?
If you're a specialist, like the three of us, then you better be damn good at what you do. And you should start training and building up your expertise when you are young and your billable hours are, your charge out rates are lower. Because no one's going to pay you $800 an hour for you to learn how to file a judicial management application,
right.
And clients will just come to you for your expertise. There was a client who told me, I want to file a JM. Then I was like, when do you want to file? I want to file today.
So a JM is a judicial management.
Yes.
Can you explain in layman terms what's that?
So that's the Singapore equivalent of an administration where a company is still a going concern, but you get a third party court appointed officer to run the company.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yes.
Okay, so to be really good at what you do, you
Yes.
better start young.
Start young when you are
Okay.
still $300 an hour.
Yes.
Yeah.
But it's not enough to be technically sound though. I mean, the question, I think it's someone is looking to build their book, meaning to have clients who will go to them and instruct them.
But doing
Yeah.
good work is good BD.
Okay.
Yeah.
That in
Yes.
and of itself is a
True.
given. I think
True.
if that's not a
True.
given, I think you better do
Okay.
something
yes,
else.
Yes.
So,
Okay, well said.
Maybe I'll just add on also. My other tip would be to, put yourself out there. And,
Yes.
when you are associate, like you said, don't just, hide among your group of associates. Get to know people from the other departments.
Yeah.
So when I was a young third year associate, I started talking to the corporate partners, the partners in different departments, the associates in corporate, and then as I got older, all the internal referrals came to me, that's a good starting point. And then of course they'll introduce you to their own clients, and then vice versa, you introduce your clients to them. That's really how you start off. Start within the firm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And that ties in nicely to the next question I'm going to ask. What advice would you give to a driven law student about to enter the real world of private practice? Because there were so many things we were not taught in law school. What advice should they ignore? Actually, I'm going to ask what advice should they ignore? Kimarie?
Well, I think, first of all, go in with an open mind, be enthusiastic. It's really about the attitude, and, have fun. Because this is going to be a long race. It's not a short sprint. Make sure that you really enjoy what you do.
Okay. How about Seow Hui?
What advice are they being given? I don't know. I just plunged right into it, if I'm honest. And
What do you wish you had known back then, if you look back?
that the practice of law is actually the business of law.
Exactly, yes. Okay, Debbie?
I think law students will be told by their professors that, you just work hard, you will get there, you become a partner as long as you work hard. But that's not necessarily the case. You really need to go and network, put yourself out there, find people that will support you, basically build your own tribe. And remember that just because there are disappointments and setbacks, that shouldn't be the end of the road for you. You just have to keep believing in yourself and fighting for the things you want.
Yes, you're not defined by your mistakes, by your failures, and it's really all about bouncing back. That, to me, actually is the hallmark of any successful person. Doesn't matter whether you're a lawyer, accountant, or anything else.
Oh, can I say one more?
Yes, of course.
I think it's far better to find a good mentor, right mentor, than to just go into a brand name firm. That is infinitely more valuable to you when you're stepping into your career.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So you all have been practicing for so many years. What new belief, behavior, or habit has had the most significant impact on your life?
Maybe I go first.
Yes.
So I said technical skills and all that, right? But I think developing your soft skills is quite important. And I actually went for career coaching. I engaged Susan De Silva. I think Seow Hui would know
Yes,
her
I'm
very
coached
well.
by Susan too.
Yes, that's
She
right.
was
So
in episode 2 of After
yeah,
the
so
Bar.
investing in yourself also means building up your own personal skills as well.
Yes, okay, thank you. How about Kimarie?
I'm not sure whether this is, particularly helpful, but to me, working efficiently is very, it's something that I've learned the hard way, but it's very important.
So how do you work efficiently? Do you hide your phone in the drawer? Not go on social media?
Yes, it takes a lot of discipline, but you just really need to focus.
Okay. How about you, Seow Hui?
I think reframing your mental posture when things don't go your way, the outcome isn't desired. It's just not what you had in mind. Just reframing the entire narrative, because failure, rejection is actually good, not a bad thing. It's actually learning.
Yes.
Because in the old days, I would look at it, and sometimes I still fall back into that bad pattern. But instinctively, you think it's bad. I fail. It's bad. I've been rejected. I didn't win this case. Or I didn't win this pitch, etc. But it's reframing your mental posture means you look at it and look at what you didn't do so well, how you could have done it better, and then the next one, or something similar comes along and you're totally killing it because you've learned.
Yeah. I love what you said, because I have to consciously do that, reframing the narrative.
All the time.
Yes, all the time. So if I fail at something, it's not that I'm a failure, but yes, okay, I made a mistake. So just...
Or maybe there were external circumstances
Yes.
that led to this outcome
True.
that you could not have influenced.
something that's beyond your control.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so now that we've heard from all 3 lawyers, thank you very much. Before we wrap up the podcast, we like to get personal and get to the rapid fire round of questions. This is a little bit, we'll just have fun with this, okay? Don't overthink it, just say. So what is your favorite food, Kimarie?
Anything that's spicy.
Debbie?
Fish soup,
Oh, okay.
particularly the one in Whampoa Market.
Oh, okay, not the arcade one. Okay, how about Seow Hui?
Yeah, those who know me will know I'm a fan of hor fun.
Love hor fun too. If there's a giant billboard where you can write a message that can reach millions of people, what would it say? Kimarie?
Seize the day.
Okay. Debbie?
You are enough.
Wow. Nice. Seow Hui?
So I can't claim credit for this, but it's from Rocky actually, and it's stayed with me. It's not about how hard you hit, but about how hard you get hit and keep moving forward.
I love that. I love that. Wow, you should print that on a t-shirt. Okay, if you could create a law that everyone in the world had to follow, what would it be? Kimarie.
Respect others.
Okay.
Okay, mine's a bit more frivolous, but you know,
Yes.
my grandparents have an optical shop. I would think people shouldn't wear wide frame glasses.
Oh, wow. Okay, you're the fashion police. Okay. Seow Hui.
I'm probably gonna get shot for saying this, but a law that limits consumerism.
Okay, great. And are you a morning person or midnight owl? Kimarie.
Definitely a morning person.
Debby?
I sleep before midnight, so definitely a morning person.
Oh, wow. Okay. Seow Hui.
I think I'm a morning person, but my husband doesn't agree. I don't know why.
Okay, last question. Durian, love or hate?
Love.
Neither hate nor love.
Okay, neutral. Seow
Yeah,
Hui.
love.
Okay. Thank you for your time and being guests on the show. I really hope you enjoyed yourself. I love having the three of you here. I'm so glad I can now check off my bucket list. I've managed 3 guests in
It's not
one
so hard to
episode.
manage, right?
No, not at all. If you've enjoyed this podcast, then be generous and share it with as many people as you can. Rate it 5 stars on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And follow me on LinkedIn. Thanks so much for listening. Join us next time to find out what could be in store for us after the bar. Bye.
Bye.